He it is to whom I shall give a sop, when I have dipped it. And when he had dipped the sop, he gave it to Judas Iscariot, the son of Simon. Verse 27 is the key verse. And after the sop, Satan entered into him. Then said Jesus unto him, That thou doest, do quickly. Now no man at the table knew for what intent he spake this unto him. For some of them thought, because Judas had the bag, that Jesus had said unto him, Buy those things that we have need of against the feast, or that he should give something to the poor. He then, having received the sop, went immediately out, and it was night. This passage kind of confuses me a little bit because the subject matter is the betrayal, right? Isn't that what the question is about? Jesus says, one of you will betray me. John, Peter said, excuse me. So John leans over and asks Christ, who is it? He says, it's the guy that I'm going to give the sop to. He dips the sop, gives it to Judas. He says, what thou doest, do thou quickly. So Judas gets up and leaves and goes. Okay, so Christ gave him the answer. They're looking at it, and their speculation is, well, he's going out to buy stuff for the feast or for the poor. So I don't know if it's just the way the mind was thinking at that point in time that they kind of forgot about the betrayal, or they didn't really, well, I know they didn't understand what was going to happen. But it seemed like you would draw the quick conclusion like we do as we read through it. The other thing is that it could be time. It could have been some delay in time that Jesus gave him the sop. People were looking at Judas, and other events happened that John doesn't record. And then Jesus says what he says to Judas, and Judas goes at that point in time. We know the events that happen. Judas goes out. He gets with the temple leaders, gets the guard together. They go out. They go to the Garden of Eden. Garden of Eden. Well, it's been a long night. The garden where Jesus was praying. And Judas betrays Christ with a kiss. Okay? And the deed is done. They arrest Christ. All the disciples flee. They go. They run. Okay? A couple of them we'll find, we know from our memories, that they do follow from a distance. John and Peter. John goes in, Peter lingers, then John comes out and gets Peter. And we'll actually look at that in just a minute. But Christ is betrayed by Judas. John 18, verse 12. Matthew chapter 27, verses 3 through 5, gives Judas's remorse. He realizes that what he's done. I'm not going to say it. Well, I will go ahead and say it. There's some that have read through it and feel like that Judas wasn't that bad of a guy, and that what he was really trying to do is force Christ into establishing his earthly kingdom, right? And no, you don't get that from the scripture. Judas betrayed Christ simply for the money, and then he felt bad about it later. He comes into the priest, feeling bad about betraying Christ. He says, I've betrayed innocent blood. Okay? And he tries to give him the money back. Undo the deed. Okay? It's a attempt at repentance. I don't know that it really was repentance. It was more just remorse. Okay? They wouldn't take the money. Okay? So what does Judas do? He throws the money down. Okay? Where does Judas go? Goes out and hangs himself. Okay? That's what Satan does. Okay? He already had Christ in the court. He had Christ in the trial. Why did Judas have to die? Why did he have to die? Why couldn't he have repented? Been like Peter? Well, probably the rest of the disciples would have killed him, right? No. That's what Satan's about. That's what he does. When he gets a hold of your heart, he deceives you, he convinces you. There was a way out for Judas. He didn't see the way. He didn't take the way. He killed himself. And that's Satan's view of human life. We know what happens. The money, they can't, it's the price of blood. You can't, we can't put it back in the treasury. They bought it from potter's wheel. What do they do with that potter's wheel? What's it for? Bury strangers in. That's where his money went. It's the blood money that he got. Okay, that's Judas. I think that he was ruled by Satan, and that's what he did. That's what I think happens. I had a preacher friend who started trying to do a study of suicides in the Bible, and it got to a point where he stopped. I mean, he said it, he couldn't deal with it. And having a relative that's done that, I kind of understand the point. Yes,
I concur with your notion of the overriding notion here is obviously Satan, but I think there's a deeper meaning, and maybe this is Rufus's meaning. Judas had a problem with the love of money.
Yeah, he did.
This is a problem.
Yes.
And when we look at many things that happens in the world, Brother Barry preached a sermon recently about cause and effect. Everything we do, there's a cause and effect. This cause was the love of the money.
Right. Well, there's no question. I mean, John chapter 1 1 John 2:16 talks about the three areas of temptation. And there's no question that's the one Satan used to get a hold of Judas' heart. It's his love for money. And we know from reading some of the other passages in John that Judas, he threw up a fit about money being spent uselessly, not because he cared for it, but because he had the bag and he used to take what was put in it. So he was a thief before that as well. Let's move on to Peter. And let's look at Luke chapter 22. Yeah, I'm saying all chapter 22. We're not going to read all chapter 22, but all my verses refer to this chapter. It's tough. I used to have to use these for the contacts that I used to wear so I could see you guys. Can't see you guys now, but I have to have these to read closely now. So it just keeps going away. Down in verse 31. This is the other scene. They're at the feast again. This is Luke's account of it. Okay? And here's what Jesus says to Simon. The Lord said, Simon, Simon, behold, Satan hath desired to have you, that he may sift you as wheat. Okay? That was the request. That was the request. When did that request take place? Well, I think probably pretty close to that time period. Okay? How it was made, I don't know if it was the same situation as Job when Satan came and God says, consider my servant Job. Satan says, well, if you take all that he has, he'll curse you to the face. I don't know if it's that case, but we know from the names that we talked about that Satan's the accuser. Okay? And so he's appeared before God and he's requested, let me attack this guy. I'll break him. I'll take him down. He'll curse you. Satan does his lies. Okay? He's accusing Peter before God. Okay? Verse 32 is kind of interesting because evidently God does allow Satan to tempt Peter. And God knows, at least Christ knows, what the result's going to be of Satan's attempt to sift Peter like wheat. Okay? But I have prayed for thee, that thy faith fail not. And when thou art converted, strengthen thy brethren. We normally read through that pretty quickly, but I wanted to take a little time and go through it a little slower. Okay? What do we know about it? Christ is saying he's praying for him. Okay? Doesn't want it to happen, but he knows it will happen. Okay? But what else does he say? Okay, Peter's going to sin. He knows he's going to deny him 3 times. Some of the other Gospels, they don't give you this account. They just tell Peter that you'll deny me 3 times. Okay? In fact, later on, Peter, the Lord actually says that to Peter. Okay. Yes.
And to your question, would he repent to use that to help his brethren?
Yeah. He does. Okay? You have Judas, which is ruled by Satan. Okay, his heart is ruled by Satan. You have Peter, who's a disciple of God, of Christ, who will give in and sin, betray Christ. Okay? The results, the outcome is entirely different. Do you have some? No, okay. The outcome is entirely different with these 2 guys, these 2 characters. Let's drop down to verse 56 through verse 60 of the events. Okay, verse 54 tells us about they took Christ, led him to the high priest's house. Peter followed afar off, and they kindled a fire for him in the hall. And Peter sat down among them. Okay, just like one of the guys in there seeing what would happen. Okay, verse 56. But a certain maid beheld him as he sat by the fire, and earnestly looked upon him and said, This man was also with him. And he denied him, saying, Woman, I know him not. And after a little while, another saw him and said, Thou art also of them. And Peter said, Man, I am not. And about the space of 1 hour after another confidently affirmed, saying, Of a truth, this fellow also was with him, for he is a Galilean. Peter said, Man, I know not what thou sayest. And immediately, while he yet spake, the cock crew. Okay, so there's the 3 denials that Peter gave to these men. He said he knew Christ. I know him not. I know him not. I'm not of them. Okay, that's what he's saying. Verse 61. And the Lord turned and looked upon Peter. And Peter remembered the word of the Lord, how he said unto him, Before the cock crow, thou shalt deny me thrice. What's verse 62 say? How did Peter respond to that? He went out and wept bitterly. Where's the rope? Where's the tree? Where's the hanging? Okay? He didn't hang himself. He went out and wept bitterly. Okay? Later on, John chapter 21, I believe it is. Christ has kindled a fire and has fish on it, and the apostles have been out fishing all night. They come in, and Christ asked Peter 3 times, Peter, lovest thou me more than these? Yes, Lord. You know I love you. He asked him that again. Yes, Lord. You know I love you. He asked him the 3rd time, and Peter was grieved. Okay? He says, Yes, Lord. You know I love you. Peter had an opportunity to repent. He repented. As a result of that, Peter was the lead apostle, I guess you'd say, but one of the apostles that preached the first sermon in the church in Acts chapter 2. Peter has many brushes with death. Later on, he dies a premature death, based on the historical accounts. Nero kills him around 67, 68 AD. Okay? And the idea is that they kill him by crucifixion. Rather than be crucified like Christ was, he asked that he be crucified upside down. That was the account of Peter. But he ends up dying, but he ends up saved eternally. ends up saved eternally. Okay. Why does time do that? I'm sitting there looking at it's 9:45. I said, hey, it's pretty good. And now it's 10:06. 20 minutes just flew by. Okay. All right. Satan's view on human life. Revelation 12:12 pictures him as having great wrath because he knows he has a short time. The passage there begins, kind of middle in the passage, but leading up to that point. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea. In 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 8, he's pictured as a roaring lion walking about, seeking whom he may devour. John 8, verse 44, describes him as a murderer from the beginning. Luke chapter 13, verses 10 through 16. Let's turn over there and look at that passage. Luke chapter 13. Luke's called the beloved physician, generally because of his supposedly medical background. But he gives a lot of accounts of Christ and his healings of people. And there's a lot of, I guess, consternation by the Jewish leaders about Christ's healing because they can't explain it. And that it's a sign that Christ really was the Son of God. And they couldn't accept that, didn't want to accept that. And so they migrated on to making that a violation of the law of the Sabbath. And that's actually happens to be the main point of this passage here. But a side point is about this woman. Verse 10, and he was teaching in one of the synagogues on the Sabbath. And behold, there was a woman which had a spirit of infirmity 18 years, and was bowed together, and could in no wise lift up herself. And when Jesus saw her, he called her to him, and said unto her, Woman, thou art loosed from thy infirmity. And he laid his hands on her, and immediately she was made straight, and glorified God. You and I would probably be happy and rejoicing about this instance. Okay, here's a woman, 18 years, she's bowed together, she's healed, she's glorifying God as she should. Okay? Not so with the ruler of the synagogue. The ruler of the synagogue answered with indignation because Jesus had healed on the Sabbath day, and said unto the people, There are 6 days in which men ought to work, and then therefore come and be healed, and not on the Sabbath day. Okay? Well, definitely a misinterpretation of the passages in the Old Testament. The Lord then answered him and said, Thou hypocrite, doth not each one of you on the Sabbath loose his ox or his donkey from the stall and lead him away to water it? Okay? Don't you all do that? And this is the point of the passage, verse 16. And ought not this woman, being a daughter of Abraham, whom Satan hath bound, lo, these 18 years, be loosed from this bond on the Sabbath day? This indicates that how Satan views things. This woman had been bound 18 years, physically suffering because of him. Let's talk about some examples of Satan's view. We're probably going to run out of time, but we'll get through, we might get through all of this. We'll get through the works of Satan. Works of Satan. But Genesis chapter 6, verses 5 through 7. Remember what that situation's about? What happens in Genesis chapter 6? It's the great flood, right? Okay, it comes upon the earth. Why does the flood come upon the earth? The wickedness of mankind. Man, their thought and intent was only evil continually. God makes a decision, I'm going to wipe out man on the face of the earth. Okay? How many people escaped through the flood? 8. Yeah, 8 people. I don't know how many people were on the earth. I've seen commentators with all sorts of estimates. Okay? Doing some mathematical calculations that I like to do. Millions of people wiped out, destroyed because of wickedness, because of sin. It wasn't just the people either. Okay? Everything that creepeth upon the earth that didn't go in the ark was wiped out and destroyed because of Satan's view of human life. He hates life. He wants to destroy it. He wants to kill it. Get rid of it. Genesis 18, verse 20. Sodom and Gomorrah. Why were they destroyed? Wickedness, sin. Satan ruled in that city. Okay? How many people survived that city? I don't know how many people there. Actually, there were, we talked about Sodom and Gomorrah. I believe there's a couple other cities in the valley that got wiped out too, as well. How many people escaped Sodom and Gomorrah? 3. 4 initially, but then she turned and looked back and didn't make it, right? Yeah, 3. Lot and his 2 daughters. That's it. Okay? 2 cities destroyed. Are they the size of Memphis? Are they the size of New York? I don't know. Okay? But the quantity of people that lost their lives as a result of the sin that existed. Numbers 14. It's called the Day of Rebellion, and said unto the people, there are 6 days in which men ought to work, and then therefore come and be healed, and not on the Sabbath day. Okay? Well, definitely a misinterpretation of the passages in the Old Testament. The Lord then answered him and said, thou hypocrite, doth not each one of you on the Sabbath loose his ox or his donkey from the stall and lead him away to water it? Okay? Don't you all do that? And this is the point of the passage, verse 16. And ought not this woman, being a daughter of Abraham, whom Satan hath bound, lo, these 18 years, be loosed from this bond on the Sabbath day? This indicates that Satan, how Satan views things. This woman had been bound 18 years, physically suffering because of him. Let's talk about some examples of Satan's view. You're probably going to run out of time, but we'll get through, we might get through all of this. We'll get through the works of Satan. Works of Satan. But Genesis chapter 6, verses 5 through 7. Remember what that situation's about? What happens in Genesis chapter 6? It's the great flood, right? Okay, it comes upon the earth. Why does the flood come upon the earth? The wickedness of mankind. Man, their thought and intent was only evil continually. God makes a decision, I'm going to wipe out man from the face of the earth. Okay? How many people escaped through the flood? 8. Yeah, 8 people. I don't know how many people were on the earth. I've seen commentators with all sorts of estimates. Okay? Doing some mathematical calculations that I like to do. Millions of people wiped out, destroyed because of wickedness, because of sin. It wasn't just the people either. Okay? Everything that creepeth upon the earth that didn't go in the ark was wiped out and destroyed because of Satan's view of human life. He hates life. He wants to destroy it. He wants to kill it. Get rid of it. Genesis 18, verse 20. Sodom and Gomorrah. Why were they destroyed? Wickedness, sin. Satan ruled in that city. Okay? How many people survived that city? I don't know how many people there. Actually, there were, we talked about Sodom and Gomorrah. I believe there's a couple other cities in the valley that got wiped out too, as well. How many people escaped Sodom and Gomorrah? 3, 4 initially, but then she turned and looked back and didn't make it, right? Yeah, 3. Lot and his 2 daughters. That's it. Okay? 2 cities destroyed. Are they the size of Memphis? Are they the size of New York? I don't know. Okay? But the quantity of people that lost their lives as a result of the sin that existed. Numbers 14. It's called the Day of Rebellion. Israel had gone to the land, they'd sent in 12 spies. Israel had gone to the land, they'd sent in 12 spies. 10 came back with an evil report, 2 came back with a good report. 10 came back with an evil report, 2 came back with a good report. They'd seen all that God had done in Egypt. They refused to believe that God would give them the land. They'd seen all that God had done in Egypt. They refused to believe that God would give them the land. They believed the 10 spies rebelled against God. They believed the 10 spies rebelled against God. As a result of their rebellion, okay, the wickedness that they had done, as a result of their rebellion, okay, the wickedness that they had done, how many people died from that? Died from that. It's a test. It was a generation. It's a test. It was a generation. Everybody over 20 years old except Joshua and Caleb. For those of you who wanted to, everybody over 20 years old except Joshua and Caleb. For those of you who wanted to count numbers and so forth, in Numbers chapter 2, verse 32, there were 603,550 people that were, in Numbers chapter 2, verse 32, there were 603,550 people that were men of war that were numbered at that point in time. Turn over to Numbers chapter 4 that were numbered at that point in time. Turn over to Numbers chapter 3. You find there's another 22,673. 3. You find there's another 22,673. 273 Levites that were numbered on top of that. 73 Levites that were numbered on top of that. 627,000, 625,000, 627,000, 625,000. Think of the math. People died as a result of this day. Think of the math. People died as a result of this day of rebellion, led by Satan. Led by Satan. Oh, led by Satan. Led by Satan. Oh yeah, I'll bow down to him. He'll give me all sorts of stuff. Oh yeah, I'll bow down to him. I'll be wealthy. He'll give me all sorts of stuff. Oh yeah, I'll bow down to him. I'll be wealthy. I'll be healthy. I'll be wise. I'll enjoy this good life, this high life. Fast forward 20 years, healthy. I'll be wise. I'll enjoy this good life, this high life. Fast forward 20 years, where will I be? Most likely dead, destitute of most things. And years, where will I be? Most likely dead, destitute of most things. And definitely my soul will be lost in hell. I encourage everyone, don't believe Satan's soul will be lost in hell. I encourage everyone, don't believe Satan's lies. Trust God. We've looked at God's view of human life. He loves. Trust God. We've looked at God's view of human life. He loves us. He cares for us. He provides for us. He's given us salvation when we didn't deserve it. He provides for us. He's given us salvation when we didn't deserve it. When we were enemies with him, he provided a way for us to escape the pollutions of the world. Thank you. He provided a way for us to escape the pollutions of the world. Thank you very much for your time, and I hope you enjoyed the festivities of the day. Happy Father's Day to all. Thank you very much for your time, and hope you enjoy the festivities of the day. Happy Father's Day to all the fathers.